With the other parts of this module as background, this part is about the transition to a transformational culture. I think Dave Coate, President and CEO of Honeywell, has said it better than anyone else I've heard. This is a quote from an interview of his. At the end of the day, Six Sigma is much less of a technical program, although it has a lot of technical tools, than it is a leadership and cultural change program. And that kind of summarizes what this module is all about. So the challenge for leaders is to assess where you're at and figure out what you need to do to go to the next level so that you can eventually arrive at where you want to go. So you need to assess where you're at in your organization as far as knowledge. What kind of technical and other knowledge do people have? What do they need? Is this technical knowledge like Six Sigma, Green Belt, or is it other knowledge with respect to systems within the company? What are people's attitudes toward change, toward each other? How would you go about changing that? What are relationships like in terms of internal and external customers? Where are you at with values and ethics? What do people seem to be operating with as their understanding of what the company values are and what the ethics are that they see and believe the company is teaching? And also, where are you at with teamwork? From this, you can decide what level you're at and begin to plan for training and transition to the next level and for levels beyond that. So this is the leadership challenge. We've been presenting a 6-level model of quality system implementation, but it might be more helpful to look at the 6 levels in 3 phases. The first phase would be the realization phase, where you're really trying to assess where you're at. You're trying to transform leadership first. You begin training in basic things like values, ethics, communications, and you go for low-hanging fruit in terms of what kind of processes you try to improve, starting with some of the easier methods to employ. And you begin to build trust with employees and shift emphasis away from target values and more toward trying to improve processes. The realization phase would be preparation for moving to the next phase, which we call the transition phase. This is where you get more into strategic planning, looking ahead, systems thinking, teamwork, and using quality tools, as well as stronger focus on internal and external customer relationships. The transition phase is where you would move from a transactional to a transformational organization. And then the third phase is the performance phase, where you begin to see alignment. You see process improvement, not just fixing things that are broke. High performance teams and variation reduction. And ultimately, a redesign of your overall processes to achieve your highest performance. In 1992, Ernst & Young published a study they made of world-class companies. They studied some of the highest performing companies in the world, and they wanted to figure out how did they get there? What were the steps that they took to get there? Some of these companies had been low performing at one point in their history and had moved up over time to achieve world-class stature. So in their study, this is what they found. They found that low-performing companies could become medium-performing companies by focusing on fundamentals, building people skills, emphasizing cost reduction, and avoiding fads. I think this aligns pretty well with the first phase that we talked about on the previous slide. You're trying to develop the basic things that people will need in order to go to a more teamwork-oriented culture. Medium-performing companies worked on process simplification, planning, and developing teamwork, and then they also included a lot of training on quality. That helped them transfer to a higher performing organization where it was mentioned that benchmarking, concern about the supply chain, and passion for being the best were common elements, as well as empowering people to be the best they can be. Let's take a closer look at level 6. I think it warrants a closer look on a number of respects. I think you can get through level 5, many companies can, by fixing and improving their existing systems, cleaning things up, getting rid of some of the bottlenecks, streamlining their systems, improving relationships with customers, implementing training, etc. But I think some companies, in order to go to level 6, have to do a major redesign in many ways. It could be organizing, it could be their way they do business. And if you read the book From Good to Great by Jim Collins, he talks about some of these major redesigns that companies went through in order to go from good to great. It took a lot of effort and a lot of faith and a very strong leadership team in order to do that. If we take a deeper look at level 6, one of the big differences is the way they think compared to the other levels. There's a higher premium put on knowledge, tapping into a larger body of knowledge, in innovation and in creativity. Some of the techniques that you might see being used are trees, which is the theory of inventive problem solving, six-hat thinking, which was mentioned earlier, and the use of scenarios in training management on how to plan ahead. One of the offshoots of the blue hat thinking in De Bono's work has been what's called enterprise thinking. And there are organizations now that are devoted strictly to helping people consider how they think about their business. Policy deployment was developed in Japan, and it looks farther ahead in the evolution of a company and makes plans based on what they want to have happen in, say, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, or even farther. Robust technology was developed by Taguchi, and it's where you spend a lot more time thinking about your use of technology, what you're using, based on what its potential is in the future for development and for innovation. Some technologies have a lot more room for innovation than others, and rather than spend your money on a technology that's going to go obsolete, think about what technology you want to invest in. And finally, a lot of investment in coaching and mentoring to help executives and others be better prepared for the future and to think more about what they're doing. I thought that a fitting conclusion to this section was to point out the alignment between Peter Senge's 5 disciplines that he expounds on in his book, The Fifth Discipline, with the other slide that we just talked about regarding level 6. The 5 disciplines that he talks about are team learning, systems thinking, shared vision, mental models, and personal mastery, and they align well with level 6. So anyway, I hope this made some sense in this journey of preparing people for managing at the higher levels.